Take a view of this from all sides. And first of all, I'm going to talk to Peter Tatchell, who joins me now in the studio. Peter, delighted to have you here. And especially interesting for me to talk to you about what's become extremely delicate and vociferous campaigns when it comes to trans rights and women's rights and how we balance that out. And increasingly we have terms like TERF being shouted at women, the cancellation of Kathleen Stock. And my question is, how do we bridge this gap and what's causing that disconnect?
Well, I'd say first that everybody should really calm down. Everybody's entitled to their point of view, but there's no excuse for abuse and insult. I don't see a conflict between women's rights and trans rights. To me, all women, including trans women, are victims of misogyny, discrimination, harassment, rape, even murder. So surely all women, including trans women, have a common interest in working together. Now, I've noticed when I came into the studio that you have a unisex toilet here at GBNews. Now, you're not giving in to woke culture. You just think it's quite simple and easy to have a unisex toilet. Everybody's got their own private cubicle. There isn't a problem. So, again, I don't understand why people are getting so het up about this.
I must admit, from my point of view, I hate unisex toilets, even though there's one here. I tend to go around the back and use another toilet altogether. And I would argue that actually the campaign for, perhaps trans rights is enabling developers to cut corners and only have to put one toilet cubicle in. But certainly, it is an interesting conversation. But increasingly, it's getting to the stage where it does feel a bit like... look at the story about Oxfam today, for instance, withdrawing a game which is supposed to represent women who have achieved great things throughout history, supposedly, we're told, because it offended some of its employees. Is that taking this concept of being woke too far? Is being woke becoming a matter of being extremely sensitive or oversensitive to issues?
Well, I think we should all try to be inclusive and respectful of others. Way back when I began campaigning 50 years ago, the N-word to describe black people was quite common. But then black people and their allies said, no, that's a very offensive word. And now, thankfully, most people accept that you shouldn't use the N-word. It's just about showing kindness and respect. And I don't think if people make an inadvertent mistake, they should be punished or demonised. We all make mistakes. So I think a bit more live and let live is needed.
But do you think that there is now a sort of witch hunt culture where people almost actively seek synthetic offence? Things that, frankly, if you're an adult and you go about your daily life, you shouldn't necessarily be offended if someone doesn't happen to know your pronoun. You should at least have a little bit of latitude or bandwidth to accommodate that. But in fact, it's almost becoming a militant campaign to try and find people and attack them, especially if that person has a public position.
Well, I agree. If someone has indicated to you their preferred pronoun, then just out of respect and kindness, please use it. But if you accidentally misgender them, not knowing the pronoun they would prefer, then that's just an innocent mistake, and you shouldn't be held to account. You shouldn't be cancelled because of that. There was no malicious intention. It was just an accident, and accidents happen. We all make mistakes. And I think what I do say is that there is a place for some cancel culture if people are advocating extreme racism or violence or glorifying terrorism. I think they should be cancelled. But if they make some innocent mistake or slip up a bit, let's forgive. Let's give the opportunity of redemption. And I find it really stressful and strange that people with often impeccable records, they make one mistake and they're cast out. That is so wrong. We have to be willing to forgive.
You've been on the receiving end yourself, haven't you? You've been such a pivotal figure in the campaign for LGBT rights, and yet you found yourself at some point on the receiving end of people saying that you weren't doing enough to accommodate, was it trans rights?
Well, no, I've always been campaigning for lesbian, gay, bisexual and trans rights. Yeah. But I did write a letter to The Observer, or I did co-sign a letter to The Observer a few years ago, where I said that, that there should be no violence or threats or intimidation. This debate should be conducted with civility. And because some of the other co-signers were trans-critical feminists, I was denounced for signing that same letter. Now, obviously, that letter did not in any way criticise, deny or abrogate the rights of trans people. That was not the issue. The issue was about civility of debate. And I'd like to think that I've often taken some very strong positions, But with all my critics, I've been polite and courteous. I've countered their arguments in a civil way. And I think that's the way we should behave. And if you want to win the trans debate, shouting abuse isn't going to get it. You need to show why the critics of trans people are wrong. You know, produce the counter-evidence, the counter-arguments. That's the way we have a civilised debate, but also how we change hearts and minds.